What's up, and welcome into the DePaul Hoops podcast. He's Andy Thompson. I am Nick Palazzolo along the Big East Energy Network, and we have some games to preview. DePaul, on the men's side, they play Arkansas Pine-Bluff, who had an interesting game against UIC, and DePaul, on the women's side, starts Big East play the first week of December as Marquette comes to town. We'll break down both matchups. That's coming up next.
Look to his shot. Spins, fade away. Yes, sir. Chandler hits the three.
Oh, tough shot. Giving it up to Reed.
Well, Andy, there is no better way to start a DePaul versus Arkansas Pine Bluff national TV game. By the way, 8 p.m. on, I think
True
it's
TV.
True TV Saturday. So God bless TV executives for that one. Arkansas Pine Bluff is making the Chicago tour as they beat UIC 63-62. And I know because, you have way too much free time. You took in Pine Bluff versus UIC.
Okay, so I'm gonna first shoot back at you there. What I do every day to start my lunch break around noon is I'll just take a look at the college hoop schedule for the day and figure out, okay, what games are going to be on when, like what games I want to watch at night if I'm not covering a DePaul game. So tonight there's a couple of ACC, SEC games that once we get off this podcast I'm going to watch. But
some good ones the other day.
Yeah, there's some good ones today. One that caught my eye though was, okay, Arkansas Pine Bluff's at UIC. So because it was halftime of the game as my lunch break started, because it was a field trip day game, I'm like, okay, I'll check the box score here. I did not expect to see Arkansas Pine Bluff 35, UIC 26 when I opened up the game. That just was not at all. Excuse me, it was 37-28. That was what it was. And I look at the halftime score and I'm like, okay, this is worth tuning into. So I figured out a way to get ESPN Plus because I'm not paying $15 a month. And then once I did that, $30 a month. And then once I did that, I was watching the game. Arkansas Pine Bluff extends the lead to 12 points after UIC had already played a first half, which had more turnovers than made field goals. They had 10 turnovers, 9 made shots. And Arkansas Pine Bluff extends the lead to 12. And by that point, the vibes in the arena, like you can even tell from watching, like just the vibes in the place are off. UIC's having bad turnovers, like dribbling off their legs. Arkansas Pine Bluff did have 10 blocks in the game. So they are making, heads up defensive plays as well. But there's a point with about, I think, 45 or so seconds to go. UIC makes a second chance layup, Jace Nathaniel off a UAPB turnover. And then there's Arkansas Pine Bluff calls a timeout 15 seconds into the shot clock with 28 seconds to go. And by this point, it's 62-62. UIC had come back all the way from down 12. They'd made some good shots. They'd had some good defensive plays. And you're thinking, okay, they're going to be able to bring this one home. So what happens is with just about 2 seconds left on the shot clock, Sam Silverstein fouls a UAPB player, Queon Williams, who we will talk about later because he is a plus player for them. Queon Williams goes 1 of 2 at the line. But what UIC coach Rob Ason did before that is he called his final timeout before Pine Bluff took the free throws. So Pine Bluff misses a second free throw, makes the second free throw, and they have no timeouts left. So whatever he draws up, he has to hope that his team ran to perfection with the stress in their head of knowing, hey, this team is 0-8, and if they beat us, it will be their only win of the season, and it will have been our mistakes that gave us the win. So with 10 seconds to go, they get the ball across half court, and then Andy Johnson for UIC, who, looking at the box score today, it appears as though he was 1 of 9 from the floor. So at that point, he's 1 of 8. And I highly doubt that, for as good of a coach as Rob Ason is, despite this result today, like I think he's done a pretty good job there. I don't think a 1 of 8 player taking a decently contested three-pointer with about 5 seconds to go is the play. So they're down 1 at that point and takes that shot. Arkansas Pine Bluff gets the rebound. UIC is not able to do anything in the way of trying to get a jump ball or wrangle it out of the guy's hand. So at that point, I mean, 63-62 Arkansas Pine-Bluff. Maybe I rambled a bit there, but that's kind of an idea of, Arkansas Pine-Bluff. Credit to them. They have a Division I win now, and that's something that's important coming into DePaul, where it's like, okay, maybe we can do this now. Like they're going to be feeling better about themselves than they were 24 hours ago. But at the same time, UIC in this game, real quick, just to go back to the box score for a second, UIC in this game, they have 17 turnovers. UAPB only has 15. They were 2 of 16 from 3. They only got, what is it? They only had 3 players in double digits, and their best player, who had 15 points, was 5 of 16 from the floor. So just, shots were not falling for their top guys. Like, it was, as much as you're going to give credit to UAPB, because now they come into DePaul 1-8 instead of 0-9, UIC did make quite a few mistakes that allowed them to get to the win. So now let's kind of move into where DePaul comes in here, where you're coming off an LSU game where you got drubbed by 33 points, 96-63, day 2 in Destin. The team is going to be looking to regroup themselves, and, playing against a team that's got a lot of emotion, as you hinted at, when we first were, off air here. It's going to be a spot where DePaul should be able to, if they can regroup themselves, come out with a lot of, authority and, get the best of a team that, is going to be feeling better about themselves than they usually are, and maybe kind of let their guard down a bit more than you'd expect.
Well, and just to kind of, pull back the curtain a little bit, we were texting about this game as I was on my lunch break, but I wasn't watching the game. But I was just,
I'm more of a sicko
enjoying
than
my
you are.
lunch
I
break.
won't be ashamed of that.
I won't. You know what? I'm just gonna. You said it, not me. But what's interesting to me is the way I kind of look at a game like this is, if you're DePaul, you're getting Arkansas Pine-Bluff at a great spot. And you guys are probably thinking, Nick, they just beat UIC. Why is it a good spot for DePaul? Because again, you're a team that was 0-8 coming into the game. Then you have a very emotional win, right? You have a 1-point win on the road against a team who should have beat you. It's your first win of the year. There's a lot of emotions that go into that. So, and the way I see this trend in sports, I see it in college basketball a little bit, and football too. Anytime there is an emotional win that kind of has like an emotional high to it, the next game after is usually an emotional letdown, because you're essentially playing with house money, because all of your time and energy was spent on that game previously. It's even harder to replicate it the next time out, just because, again, that goes against human nature. So I think that DePaul, you're getting Pine Bluff at a great opportunity and a great time, because again, if they did suffer a loss to UIC, again, they dropped to 0-9. I think that this DePaul team could have played to their down to their opponent a little bit, which they've shown at times this season they've done. But now that Pine Bluff kind of has a little respect, right? I'm not saying that, you should play down to a 1-8 team, but it's just the emotion. It's very rare for a team that plays emotional games back to back, but let alone wins both of them, let alone a team that's a bottom 10 team in the country. So, the only teams that I've seen that can win these back to back games have the emotional high and then be fine and have it not affect the next game. Those are your teams that are ranked in the AP top 25, the USA Today top 25, Ken Pom top 10. Like, those are the teams that do it. Like UConn, perfect example. They beat Kansas the other night. And I have no concerns. It was a very emotional game. They were down 6, I think, with, midway through the second half, and they find a way to win. I'm not worried about them. They've proven it. Like, they've proven they can win a national title, right? So I don't have concerns about that. Arkansas Pine Bluff, again, it's kind of it's a new thing for them. Like, winning a game that has emotional energy, like, that's why DePaul, I think, is getting them at a good spot. And again, you're trying to play the psychological aspect more than the basketball aspect.
No, for sure. And I do really quick want to give credit, because UAPB was able to pull out an emotional win with their leading scorer. I don't want to say being a non-factor, but he did not show up the way you would expect him to. I'll just kind of real quick get into the 2 or 3 guys I kind of would have at the top of my scouting report if I'm DePaul, but I'll start with Jaquan Scott, who on the season has been averaging 16 points, 7 boards, 91% from the free throw line and 35% from three. So he is a fairly decent shooter. He's very efficient from the free throw line, but today against UIC, he had 3 points and was 1 of 6 from the floor, 5 rebounds, 3 turnovers, 2 steals, and 2 blocks, and he ended up fouling out of the game. So in spite of him having not even 1/5 of his season average of production, UAPB, to their credit, was able to pull this one out. So clearly, they are able to somewhat account for foul trouble, which, what does that mean? It essentially means that they are able to kind of, have the next man up mentality to an extent, given their competition, when, one of their best players is in foul trouble. And for a team at this level, that is commendable. So I do want to real quick give them, real props for that, because it can't have been a terribly easy thing to do, given that, hey, one of our leaders is in foul trouble on the road at UIC with a bunch of screaming kids who their number one priority isn't a UIC win. They just want to see UIC get to 67 points so they can do the
No,
they can do that. Hey, you did it to me last show. I get to do it to you now. Let it be. And you'll do it again, I'm sure, before the season's over. But yeah, so just for Jaquan Scott to not have a productive game today and for them to still be able to pull out a win, that to me said more than the win itself, because that means they can have that next man up mentality that emotions or not is an important thing. If you're going to win games at all, you've got to have that. The other player who was a big factor today and who has been all season as well is Queon Williams. He averages 14.8 points, 6.5 boards, 2 steals a game, which is notable to me. And he is a 78% free throw shooter, and he is only 27% from three. So he is not much of a perimeter threat, but the 2 guys I just named are both shooting 78% or better from the free throw line, which means that if you foul them, you got to play the law of averages. More often than not, they're going to be able to get you from the free throw line. And one thing, if you look at KenPom, that UAPB is rather skilled at is they are 58th in the country in free throw shooting at 76.2%. So this team is, for as much as, they're only 358th in the rankings, and neither their offense or their defense is above 340. This is a team that's skilled at getting to the line, and they will make you pay more often than not when they get you there.
And I think, just to kind of bring it back locally to DePaul, I know we've talked a lot around DePaul, but not specifically.
Yeah, this is an MVC podcast. Don't worry, guys. The valley runs deep, but not on this show.
Yeah, it doesn't run this deep. If you're DePaul, this has to be a game where you win by at least 30, 35 points. Because if you look at Arkansas Pine-Bluff's 4 games that they have played, they've played 9 total, but they've played 4 games against power conference schools. They've played at Washington, at Vanderbilt, at Oklahoma, and then at SMU. Those 4 power teams have scored a minimum of 94 points. 94, 95, 104, 106 by SMU. This is an opportunity to really build on some offensive momentum. I understand the LSU game is the LSU game, so it's not exactly a direct carryover. But this is an opportunity where I will be a little disappointed if they don't reach 90, 95 points, because this is a game that has the opportunity for a lot of guys offensively to get going. We've kind of seen it in spurts, but we've never seen it consistency. And the 2 games upcoming in Pine Bluff on Saturday and then Morgan State the following Tuesday is just a great opportunity for them to just kind of build something sustainable to kind of propel them into Wichita State and St. John's, 2 big road tests for this Demon team.
No, for sure. And I think you talk about how you want to see the offense kind of come together and be able to score 95 to 100 in that range, which I think this team's totally capable of doing, even without Brandon Macklin, who we are still, you and I, we're recording this Wednesday night, and it's going to come out Friday. But as of Wednesday, we're recording this, we still don't have an update on Brandon, but I would assume we don't see him, injury or not, at all during Pine Bluff or Morgan State, because you want to get him healthy for that 4-game.
He shouldn't need to play in this game.
No, he shouldn't need to play. If he
Give
does,
me more than 5 Nate Kasher minutes. That's what we need.
If Brandon Macklin needs to play for us to win one of these next 2 games, I'll be blunt. This team should finish 12th in the Big East, because it's the ability level of the 2 teams.
Aren't there only 11 teams?
Yes, but clearly you're missing the joke. Anyway,
Sorry.
where were you in the preseason? Anyway,
Sorry.
no, but if Macklin needs to play, I think that says a lot more about this team. But, no, I mean, obviously you are going to be without your emotional leader, presumably for these 2 games. And again, we don't know that. But the other thing that I want to mention, but I'm looking forward to hopefully seeing, progress in, is against Detroit Mercy, we did put up those 95 points you were wanting to reach, but that came at the expense of, on the other end of the floor, you allowed 75 points to a Detroit Mercy team that shoots under 30% from 3 and isn't as efficient at the free throw line and doesn't shoot as well from 2. You allowed them to shoot over 50% in the game. And, you look at the pace that Arkansas Pine-Bluff plays with, they are 16th in the country in pace. And so, ahead of playing teams like St. John's and UConn, who are going to come at you guns ablaze, you've got to be able to, show that you can defend teams that play with pace and stay in front of them and not be as handsy as the team has been. Guys like CJ and Cruz and Brandon, and there's not one guy I'm calling out. I'm just naming guys who we've seen get in foul trouble that way, even Layden to an extent. Just the guys who are guarding and who are going to be, guarding their primary ball handlers in this game. You're going to want to see progress from them in terms of being able to defend without fouling. And even though they may not have the strongest athletes on the other end, the pace they're going to come at you with is going to be equivalent to what we'll see against some of the power teams we're going to play later. And that's going to be an important thing to see progress in from this game as well.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of piggyback off of that, like DePaul needs to face a paced like team like this, as you just mentioned, because as you said, again, they start off right with a gauntlet, and I think we can even start that a game earlier with Wichita State.
100%, yeah, I would.
To Queens to play St. John's. But then you, like we've talked about, you go Wichita State, finishing that home and home, then at Carnesecca to play St. John's, and then you come home the Sunday before Christmas to host UConn, and UConn looks
really good.
Yeah.
Now with Braylon Mullins, they can win it all. Not that they couldn't before, but with him, it's a lock.
Right.
They can do it.
Right, and then you have to go at Villanova on New Year's Eve, and that is Nova's first Big East home game. So that's the first Big East game of the Kevin Willard era. So I think,
not to mention, you've beaten Villanova once. Sorry to cut you off. You've beaten Villanova once since 2008. Just want to put that out there as well. Like, that is not going to be an easy game at all.
Right, and I think, again, like I talked a little bit about it in the open of the psychological factors of Pine Bluff. Same kind of thing for Nova. Again, there's going to be just that natural energy in the arena at Nova, just simply because it's the first Big East game. And I know, we're not breaking down that game just yet. But again, I think you have 2 cupcakes, I'll call it what it is, in Pine Bluff and Morgan State. Those games are bottom 20 teams in the country. Like, these games need to be 30, 35-point wins. Like, I would like, the post-game notes to be 2 pages and just have so many stats on them about random things. Like, I don't want another 1-page couple bullet point post-game notes because we got our doors blown off, or it's a close game where nothing really happened.
Or the defense was, I don't want to use the word lackadaisical, but the defense had some lapses and allowed more scoring on the other end. Like I want to be hearing about, the team hasn't held this team to as few points since X date. I want to read something like that after this game.
Right.
And I think you do as well.
Exactly. You want to focus on the women's side now?
Yeah, let's talk about the women. I guess I'll kind of let you lead this one since you're making a special guest appearance tomorrow night, we'll say. So kind of tell us what you'll be doing tomorrow night and kind of give us a primer on the Marquette women who, just like the men, returned nearly everybody from last year's team. But unlike the men, they look pretty good on the women's side.
Yeah, so I'm pinch hitting on Radio DePaul Sports and Entertainment. I'll be calling the game on RadioDePaulSports.com, going back to the station where I spent 2 great years. A little weird. I don't know if anybody's graduated and then come back to call a game. So that might be
You're
first.
a man of many firsts, Nick.
This is true. But just kind of as I'm, not to flex my notes and my boards, but like
you definitely want to. You definitely
well, yeah, because they're really cool. It's just really cool. I had to get Billy on there. But this Marquette game was picked second in the Big East preseason poll for a reason. Again, like as you just mentioned, they're returning 12. They returned their whole starting lineup from last year. Only 3 newcomers. And this is a team that they're 4-3 on the year. But in those 3 losses, they've been out-rebounded by 15 plus. So if they can't secure the boards, that is when this team gets in trouble. Lee Volker, Skylar Forbes, and Hallie Weiss, like, those are the 3 I am watching on the Marquette side, who will probably put on a show, Thursday night, at Wintrust with coverage on Peacock and NBC Sports Network, which is weird to say now, but it's back. Um, but it's really interesting because I was kind of, as I was prepping my DePaul sheet, I was looking through some quotes that Jill Pizzotti said. And it was very similar because we heard Chris Holtman talk about this a little bit. After the Loyola loss, for DePaul, they lost 61-49 just before Thanksgiving. Pizzotti said post game something that was really fascinating, and she was talking about how they want to play quick, but they need to be patient for things to. They need to be patient if options don't present themselves. So, like, the way I kind of understood that is they need to simplify their offense because they do want to play fast. They want to play that Doug Bruno ball that was very successful at DePaul for decades under Coach Bruno. But I think in the last recent stretch, DePaul has really seen, they pass and then they have to think about their next move. Instead of just kind of passing and reading and reacting, they're just actually catching the pass, looking, processing it all, and that's where they're kind of, screwing themselves in a way because there's just a lot of thinking. And Pizzotti kind of hinted at that earlier, because she wants, pass and move on, not pass and search. Like, that's exactly what Pizzotti talked about after the Loyola game. And Meg Newman even said it after Loyola. They're like, they're frustrated because they know this is a talented group, and I'd argue like there is much better depth on this team than there was at any point last year. Like, they just haven't really found it and hit their stride. Again, they're 2-6. But it certainly doesn't get easier for DePaul. Again, you host Marquette on Thursday, and then you go to UConn. Like, that's not exactly, you think the men's side has a hard start. Like, the women's side also has a hard start, and they're starting a couple weeks sooner in Big East play because their season does end a week earlier. But this on the women's side, they're also shooting 29.8% from 3. This is a team that was kind of built around the 3-point shot, and they're just not falling. And I think, again, there's kind of a multitude of factors what's going on with the women's side. But I think part of it too is their shots aren't falling, they're getting frustrated, and they're thinking too much. Like, that's just been a recipe for what we've seen. Because they're losers of their last 3, right? Northern Colorado had the lead for 30 seconds, but it was the 30 seconds that mattered, in that home MTE that I know you were at. So I'm really fascinated to see how this game plays out. We'll probably see Meg Newman in the starting lineup for just the second time all year, because she is by far your best rebounder on this team. Kate Novick leads your team in rebounds. But I think just to try and negate some of the Golden Eagles, you have to secure the boards. But again, this Marquette team, they rank 26th in the nation in blocks per game. Like, they get their hands on the basketball. If it's not a steal, it's a deflected pass or it's a block. So this is like a really fascinating game on paper. Just given everything that is happening, and 81% of their points have come from their starting lineup. Like, this is not a team that has gone deep into their bench. Like, they returned all their starters, but it's a different starting lineup from what they returned a year ago.
No, for sure, and I like that you highlighted the rebounding as a way that Marquette can lose a game, because I just real quick want to, obviously, we know that Marquette's very good at blocking, and they've got a team that's connected. They play together. Like, I'm not at all about to talk down on this program because we know the Golden Eagles love their deflections and they love retention, and that's something that both things this team does very well. But you want to talk about the rebounding strengths for both teams. DePaul averages 36.4 and Marquette averages 34.4. Now, are you ready for this? There are 4 players on DePaul averaging 5 rebounds or greater. And there's only one player on Marquette, Hallie Weiss, who averages more than 5 a game. The 4 who average 5 a game, or at least 5 a game on DePaul, are Kate Novick, who, she's been just a ridiculous stat stuffer, by the way.
She's been all over the place, yeah.
She's
she
averaging
leads the team in points and rebounds.
She leads the team in points, rebounds, and second in assists, and also fourth in steals. And she leads the team in blocks as well. She's just been a ridiculous athlete. Great pickup for this team. 6.9 boards a game for her. 6.6 for Natalia Nelson, who I think you would agree is having just a breakout sophomore year. And then Meg Newman, played 4 games, averaging 5.5 boards. And Elena West, who's been another stat sheet stuffer with 2.8 steals a game. She's averaging 5 boards a game. So the women are crashing the glass on this team. But the one thing they are not doing well, obviously, as we know, is because you talked about it in detail, and something that I tried to get to last week but couldn't quite find the right wording for it was, Pizzotti's right, is they just sometimes think too much, and the offense could be simpler if they just, took their time and weren't trying to run and gun as much, like you mentioned. But, this team, like you mentioned, has a talent, and this is as healthy as they've been in quite a while. You had Michelle Ojo out, last couple weeks with the concussion protocol, but in a game that I sort of caught a little bit of because I was at Modesto Airport when they played at Princeton on Sunday, Michelle Ojo was the leading scorer in that game. She was the only one with double-figure points. She had 10. I believe she had 6 boards, but I don't have the box score up because the link was glitching, so don't quote me on that. But I think she led the team in both points and rebounds that day with 10 and 6. So having her back is going to be huge. And now that you've got Meg and Michelle able to play significant front court minutes, that takes some of the load off Justice Odom, where she can, come in off the bench again and be the spark that she's been, to her credit. And then you've got, the guard room as healthy as it's been in a while. Obviously, you don't have Kate Clark, but, you've got Kate Novick, who's clearly established her role as one of the lead guards on this team. Devin Hagman's had some games under her belt now, and she's starting to come into her own, averaging 5.5 assists for this team. You've got, Ajanique Mayo is starting to find herself from the perimeter. You've got Allie Tim, who's established herself as a perimeter threat, and her efficiency's dipped a bit, but that's obviously because she's a redshirt freshman who's at the top of the scouting report. That's going to happen. There's going to be some regression to the mean, especially after that just ridiculous 8 of 10 performance from 3 that I saw on opening night against Valpo. You're not going to shoot probably like that ever again, and there's nothing wrong with that. But right, like you mentioned, the talent on this team is through the roof, especially compared to what they've had since Anissa Morrow departed the team. And even though there's no Jory Allen on this team, who's just going to impose herself night in, night out, there are a lot of players who are getting familiar with each other and are figuring out how to swing the ball. And once they can start to get the right shots and really figure out the timing of each other, this is going to be a team that has all the pieces and the requisites to make some noise in the Big East. And the first test is going to be against Marquette coming up here.
And I think what's just to kind of wrap up on Marquette, like this Marquette team is very consistent offensively in a way that you don't see a lot of, because here they're because women's basketball is 4 quarters instead of 2 halves. But here's their point totals in quarters 1 through 4: 121, 115, 119, 120. Like, they don't have slow starts. Like, they're very consistent. For between 115 and 121, that's how many points they've scored in each quarter. Like, it's a very consistent group. And defensively, they've had, again, it's the 4th quarter. They've had fast starts in the 1st and 3rd quarters, and then it's that 2nd and 4th quarter where you really get a little tricky. But, like, for DePaul, it's securing rebounds, and I think at some point, again, you're not going to shoot 29.8% from 3 the whole year. Like, you're just not going to, because again, I don't think there's way too much talent on this team for that to be sustainable. But I'm really fascinated by, being able to take in this game Thursday night on Peacock. Just watching it, and it's like, because it's a fascinating game. The records may not show it, but the numbers show that we could be in for quite a treat.
Yeah, I think, like you mentioned, I'm glad you underscored the rebounding battle, because I do think just the depth of this team and their rebounding capabilities versus Marquette, who does rely on Hallie Weiss a lot to get some of those boards. Obviously, look, this is a team that, as you mentioned, when they get out-rebounded by a significant margin, some of the offense, even though for as consistent as they are, just some of the opportunities are obviously ripped away when you don't get that rebound, whether it's defensive or offensive. So I do think that that's going to be an area to watch, and it's an encouraging strength for DePaul that, for as much as their offense, and especially their free throws, just have not been I think, up to the standard that Joe Pizzotti would like, and I don't think that's saying something that's out of the.
No, I think that's fair.
Yeah, no, I think that's about on base, but just the rebounding prowess that DePaul has shown early on in the season, despite their now 2-6 record, I think that presents an interesting challenge against Marquette tomorrow, where they do, at least in that statistical category, have an advantage that could carry them pretty late into the game and make it closer than Marquette probably thinks it will be.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm really excited for the two games coming up Thursday night, starting with the women, and then Saturday night with Pine-Bluff on the men's side.
Yeah. Wow, we got this done in just about a half an hour. I'm impressed with this because it wasn't our usual 50 minutes, and we'll continue to try to put out these more succinct episodes for you guys. But appreciate you guys joining us as always. For Nick Palazzolo, I am Andy Thompson. Appreciate the Big East Energy Network for hosting us as always, and we look forward to providing you the same coverage as always, and we'll see you guys next time.
So long, everybody. All right, I'm out.
Adios. I will see you.